Hi everyone, welcome to the next episode of the Real Sense Retirement Show. I am your host, Isaiah Rial. Thank you for making us a part of your day. In today's episode, we are talking about, is a recession on the horizon? I'm sure many of you have heard by now that many experts out there believe there's going to be a recession coming up here pretty darn soon. Is that true? We'll discuss that today. Hi everyone, welcome back. In today's episode, we're going to talk about a possible recession coming up here on the horizon. You know, for many of you that listen to me, we talk about retirement a lot. For many that listen to my content, you're pre-retirees or you are retirees. So today we're going to talk about, here's an agenda for our podcast today. We're going to talk about number one, what is a recession? We're going to define what that is and the characteristics of a recession. We're going to talk about number two, are we in a recession already? And the reason for yes or for no. And the third thing we'll talk about is, I'm going to share 3 things that you can do now to get prepared for a possible recession. Again, these are going to be geared more towards retirees or pre-retirees. So stay tuned, let's get started. So, what is the definition of recession? Well, the textbook answer is when our GDP, which is our gross domestic product, it's the way we measure growth in our economy, it's when our GDP decreases consecutively for 2 consecutive quarters. Well, are we there yet? Yes, we are. GDP decreased in quarter 1 of 2022, and it also decreased in quarter 2 of 2022. So, what does that mean? Does that mean we're already in a recession? Not exactly. Let me explain. What else typically happens during a recession? There are some key characteristics. Here's 3 to highlight. Usually during a recession, we have high unemployment. We also have a decrease in labor growth. And also, too, we see company profits begin to decrease. Well, at this moment, according to First Trust portfolios, the unemployment rate has not increased. In fact, it has dropped. Payrolls have not gone down. In fact, they have grown at a very rapid pace. And industrial production continues to climb. In fact, First Trust portfolios even sees and shows, based off their calculations, economic growth at a 3% annual rate for the 3rd quarter. So with all of that being said, does that mean there won't be a recession? Probably not. In this same article, First Trust goes on to say that they think a recession is coming because monetary policy will have to get tight enough to bring inflation back down, and a monetary policy tight enough to do that is also likely to drag our economy into a recession. So now let me simplify and define that for you. What does all that mean? What that means is, as you and I both know, inflation is extremely high right now. As you and I also both know, the Federal Reserve is raising interest rates right now. And the reason they're raising interest rates is because they're trying to get inflation under control. What First Trust Portfolios is trying to say here is that they feel that monetary policy will have to get tight enough. And what that means is that the Federal Reserve will have to continue to raise rates until they begin to see inflation begin to decrease. As you and I have both seen this year so far, the Fed has continued to raise rates at a very rapid pace. And what has happened to inflation? It has not budged. In fact, it has continued to increase. So what First Trust is trying to share here is that they feel that the Fed will have no choice but to continue to raise rates to a point that is going to be extremely high, to levels that we probably haven't seen in decades. And it's going to get to a point that it's going to get so high that we're going to end up being in a recession. And so, so with that being said, First Trust also is saying is that they're going to expect to see a recession to start in the second half of 2023, with some risk of it starting in either the first half of 2023 or the first half of 2024. I typically tend to agree. I do think that we are headed towards a recession. This is just my own personal feeling. I do feel as well that we'll probably see it at some point in 2023. So if there is an impending recession on the horizon, What can you do now to get prepared? Well, I'm going to share 3 things that you can do now to get prepared for any possible recession. And again, the people I talk to here are typically retirees and pre-retirees. So this is going to be more geared towards people who are retired or people who are planning to retire. So what are 3 things that we can do now to help us get prepared for any possible recession here on the horizon? The first thing I would tell you is pay off any debts that you have, specifically variable interest rate debt. Having debts outstanding during a recession can be tough. As you and I have both seen, the Fed has continued to raise rates. What that means to you and I is that if you have any variable interest rates out there, that rate is going to continue to increase. If that rate continues to increase, that means that you're going to pay more on any interest payments on your debt out there. So to try to avoid that, pay off any outstanding debts that you have now. The second thing you can do, watch your expenses, and also too, be very careful with major purchases. So for many that follow me, I talk a lot about retirement. I know a lot of retirees listen to this. Most retirees live off of scheduled distributions from their retirement accounts, or they live off of a fixed budget. Look through your current expenses. Is there anything that you can cut from your expenses for the time being? Or is there anything that you can quote unquote tighten the belt on right now as we begin to enter this time of a possible recession? Maybe that's limiting a golf outing for yourself. Maybe that's limiting a vacation here and there. I'll also say that includes limiting major purchases out there. So if you're looking to buy a new car, a new home, any major expense out there, ask yourself the question, can we hold off? Can we wait on purchasing? Can we wait to purchase this a year or 2 from now? According to CNBC, there's an article that came out on October 13th, and the title of this was 76% of adults are making lifestyle changes, delaying big purchases, and reducing debt to prepare for a potential recession. So it's right there. People are already beginning to plan for this, and so I highly encourage you to as well to ask yourself these questions and to think about too. Do I have any debts outstanding? Can I pay those off? Let me look at my expenses. Is there anything that I can cut out here just a little bit to save on expenses, to save on distributions for myself? Because as you and I both know, cash flow is king when it comes to retirement. And the third thing you can do is your portfolio recession ready? So what do I mean by that? Again, if you work with a financial professional, a financial advisor, a CFP, talk to them about this. If you're a client of mine listening to this, we'll be having a conversation if we have not already. Typically speaking, we want to make sure our portfolios are in line with what's happening in the real world. Right now we've had a lot of ups and downs in the markets. Making sure that your portfolio is positioned for volatility, perhaps. Making sure your portfolio is positioned for a recession. So right now, typically speaking, there are sectors that typically do better in recessions than others. A few examples are commodities, utilities, consumer staples, healthcare, just to name a few. If you have an advisor, is your advisor having conversations with you about these things? Are they making small adjustments here and there to help you prepare for something in the future? When it comes to fixed income money, which typically is your bonds, your safe monies, your conservative monies out there, what can you be doing there? As you and I have both seen, fixed income bonds have had a very tough year, one of their worst years on record. Why is that? It's because interest rates have continued to rise. We're in a rising rate environment. Bonds have not done well this year because of that. Rates are going to continue to rise. With that being said, are you looking at treasury bonds that are giving over a 4% return right now? Are you looking at money market funds? Are you looking at CDs as an alternative to your bonds for the time being? So make sure that you have a game plan for your money. Make sure if you have your financial advisor, talk to them about this. Hey, if we're headed towards a recession, are there any adjustments that we should be making now to get us ready for that? Whether it's portfolio related, whether it's distribution related, whether it's just reviewing our expenses to make sure that we're all on the same page here. So those are 3 things that you can do now to get started, to get ready for a possible recession. Pay off any debts, watch your expenses and major purchases, and make sure your portfolio is in line with what's happening in the real world. Thank you so much for watching and listening today. I look forward to talking to you again soon. Have a great week. Look forward to talking again next week. Have a good one. Take care. This podcast is for informational purposes only. It does not constitute a complete description of our investment services or performance. This podcast is in no way a solicitation or offer to sell securities or investment advisory services, except where applicable, in states where we are registered or when an exemption or exclusion from such registrations exist. Information throughout this podcast, whether stock quotes, charts, articles, or any other statement or statements regarding market or other financial information is obtained from sources which we and our suppliers believe reliable, but we do not warrant or guarantee the timeliness or accuracy of this information. Nothing on this podcast should be interpreted to state or imply that past results are an indication of future performance. Neither we nor our information providers shall be liable for any errors or inaccuracies, regardless of cause or the lack of timeliness of, or for any delay or interruption in the transmission thereof to the user. There are no warranties expressed or implied as to accuracy, completeness, or results obtained from any information posted on this or any linked podcast.